Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Dholavira. Dholavira is an ancient Harappan city that has been standing ever since it was first built about 5,000 years ago. It can be found in western India, named after the modern village about a mile away from it. It was here in this city where many of the most powerful people of the lost civilization once lived. It was one of the 5 major cities of Harappa, occupied for an astounding 1,500 years before it was abandoned. In comparison, New York is around 400 years old. According to UNESCO, Dholavira represents one of the best preserved ancient settlements from Southeast Asia. This city is still standing, although not in its previously pristine condition. Also, archaeologists have been able to dig up its cemetery and look at the bones of the people who once lived there. This city of Dholavira is an excellent example of how ancient people thrived in a desert environment. Even though water is scarce in this dry and barren part of India, they managed to irrigate crops and drink fresh water. They also had what some might consider a modern street layout. There was a fortified castle as well as workshops where they produced treasure from gold, ivory, and copper on a massive scale. The Harappan civilization also came up with their own language and script. However, nobody has ever been able to decipher it. Archaeologists say their language had about 400 basic signs, but many more variations. Dholavira was likely abandoned because of the inhospitable wasteland it was situated in. The place is so barren that the ruins have never been torn down, and they've hardly decayed. Number 9. The Palmanova Star Fort. Palmanova is without a doubt one of the most unique cities in Italy. It was founded in 1593 during the time of the Venetian Republic. This was a sovereign state in Italy with Venice as its capital, and it was constantly at war with the Ottoman Empire. Palmanova was built at the very eastern edge of the Republic as a military station to fend off Ottoman attacks. However, it wasn't designed just to be another ugly military outpost. Famous Italian architect Vincenzo Scamozzi designed it in the shape of a 9-pointed star, and he implemented all the latest military technologies of the 16th century. The whole city was surrounded by a deep moat, and there was a defensive perimeter wall installed with tall ramparts. Access to the town was restricted to only 3 guarded gates. The city itself was then divided into individual sections, with each chunk ending at the center to form a solid pentagon. That pentagon is now a city square, and the city is still occupied to this very day. The idea behind the city was geometric harmony mixed with strong military security. There is even a rumor that Palmanova was inhabited by merchants, craftsmen, and farmers who worked together in order to create a self-sustaining community. Number 8. Artaxata. Artaxata was an ancient city in Armenia founded by the mighty king Artaxerxes I of the Artaxia dynasty in the year 176 BC. It soon grew to become the capital of the kingdom, ruling over a massive amount of territory in old Mesopotamia. This city was also a center for Hellenistic culture. It was unimaginably huge, built across a series of tall hills overlooking the river Araxes. It looked like something out of a myth, with tall towers and huge defensive walls. At the tops of the hills were huge palaces and temples dedicated to the ancient gods. Today, the city is still standing, but just barely. The gigantic Acropolis, along with its public baths and dwellings, have all been reduced to rubble. The city's ruins are still on the hills, but it would be impossible to imagine what the place looked like if not for the help from archaeologists. Thanks to years of excavations, we now know just how spectacular Artaxata truly was. Unfortunately, the city was too close to the Roman Empire. In the year 58 AD, the Romans seized the city and burned it to the ground. Emperor Nero sponsored reconstruction about a century later, but the city was destroyed yet again by the Persians in 369 AD. It's a miracle that anything is left of Artaxata at all. Number 7. La Quemada. La Quemada is a very mysterious archaeological site in Mexico near the city of Guadalajara. According to Spanish chronicler Fray Juan Torquemada in 1615, it was one of the cities briefly occupied by the Aztecs as they migrated into central Mexico. Legend has it that the Aztecs left the children and elderly people at La Quemada so that they would have an easier time conquering tribes they came across. Some say the Aztecs lived here for about 9 years, then marched south with an army that would only be defeated when the Spanish showed up. This begs the question, who built La Quemada? If the Aztec came across its ruins and camped inside its walls for a decade before moving on, who built it first? Historians say it may have been the same builders of Teotihuacan, yet another ancient city that was rediscovered by the Aztecs on their journey through Mexico. Both cities were built sometime around 300 AD, and both are miraculously still standing today. Both of the cities were also abandoned when the Aztecs showed up around 1200 AD. These days, the site is littered with the remains of the city. There's shattered walls everywhere and the imprints of huge avenues big enough for modern tanks to drive through. You can also find foundations for long since destroyed pyramids, as well as ceremonial structures and residential houses. Everything was built out of slabs of clay, so over time the buildings have gradually deteriorated. One of the most impressive structures still standing is the votive pyramid. It's about 30 feet tall and it's only missing a small piece of its top. Archaeologists think there was once a stairway leading up to a small temple room, but nothing remains of it now. Number 6. The Passetto. The Passetto di Borgo is a secret corridor which connects St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City to the Castel Sant'Angelo. It was used by popes in centuries past as an escape tunnel when their lives were under threat. One of the few recorded incidents when the Passetto was needed came in 1527. This was when the city of Rome was sacked, and Pope Clement VII had to flee his palace and take refuge in Castel Sant'Angelo by traveling through the secret passageway. The Passetto is sitting on ruins that date back to the 6th century AD. After the Ostrogoths took Rome, they built a low wall near the tomb of Emperor Hadrian and linked it to the larger city walls built 300 years earlier. But this wall crumbled shortly after it was constructed, and it was replaced with an even mightier wall around 800 AD, following the coronation of Emperor Charlemagne. The wall was then used as a defensive perimeter around the tomb of St. Peter, one of Jesus' apostles. However, it was torn down in 816 AD by the people of Rome after the death of Pope Leo III, leaving the tomb utterly defenseless. St. Peter's Basilica was subsequently attacked by pirates twice over the next few decades. Pope Leo IV finally insisted that a new defensive wall should be built on top of the other two ruined walls around 850 AD, likely at the urging of Emperor Lothair I. This wall became permanent, and the Passetto was installed around 1377 for use as a secret passage for popes that needed to make a quick escape. It still stands to this day, built on top of 1,000 years of Roman history. Do you think the Passetto has been used recently by the Pope? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe. Number 5. The Ziggurat of Ur. When archaeologists began excavating the Ziggurat of Ur in 1923, it was little more than a hunk of deteriorating stone. This was because this impressive feat of ancient engineering was destroyed in the 5th century BC. But 2,500 years later, a large bulk of the Mesopotamian pyramids still remained, enough to captivate the world's imagination. But what exactly is a ziggurat? It was a pyramid unique to Mesopotamia. In each chief city of the region stood a tall ziggurat, much like the pyramids in Egypt, but with its own special features. These pyramids were tiered, growing smaller and smaller with each stepped platform. There were stairways or ramps leading to each level, and at the summit there was a shrine dedicated to the city's god. It took an insane amount of work to build these ziggurats. It was as if the Mesopotamians were building the Great Pyramid of Giza in all of their major cities. It wasn't even for burying kings, but simply for building altars to the gods. Archaeologists have theorized that it was a way for them to be closer to heaven. The Mesopotamians believed they needed to be closer to the throne of the gods if they were to be taken seriously. The reason the Ziggurat of Ur is so famous these days is because it's still standing. At least it's the only one still standing in any real capacity. It's been partially reconstructed and looks incredible, so now we just have to go and visit. Number 4. The Monk's Mound. It's hard to see Monk's Mound in pictures and imagine what it looked like 600 years ago, or even 1,000 years ago. The mound is part of what was once the largest urban settlement in the southeastern United States. In fact, the settlement of Cahokia may have been the biggest city in North America and South America up until its abandonment in the 1400s. Monk's Mound was once an artificial mountain that may have been used for communal gatherings, maybe even with a large temple or other structure on top. It was built by the Mississippian culture and was the largest of 120 earthen mounds inside the ancient city of Cahokia. And although it's difficult to imagine what it once looked like, it's not impossible. The mound is still standing, its platform a whopping 900 feet long. And you can still climb to the top of the mound to where the leaders of the city once addressed their people. Monk's Mound is covered in grass and kind of looks like an overgrown step pyramid, like a ziggurat you might find in Mesopotamia. However, scientists don't know for certain what the mound was used for. They know it was built on a floodplain and that its foundations were likely covered in water for most of the year. But how the mound was used is still a mystery. Caitlin Rankin from the Illinois State Archaeological Survey says the mound may have had something to do with their mythology and worldview. Unfortunately, we don't know what the Mississippian culture believed in. They left nothing behind except the giant earthen mounds in the ruins of their great city. Number 3. Vaniskvabi. The cave monastery of Vaniskvabi has been around since the 8th century AD. It's one of 2 cave monasteries in Georgia that are so old it's a miracle they haven't collapsed in on themselves. The other monastery is called Vardzia, but Vaniskvabi is far more ancient. A group of religious fanatics began chiseling holes in the side of a mountain 1,200 years ago. They soon constructed a maze of tunnels like an ant nest inside the solid rock. They built 2 megalithic churches carved from raw stone, one with a domed ceiling that still doesn't appear to have so much as a crack in it. Monks lived inside the cold, semi-subterranean chambers with their windows looking out over the wide, empty valleys beyond. There are 19 levels inside the monastery with 200 rock-cut chambers, and the whole thing is situated 600 feet above flat ground. It consists of storage chambers and dusty churches, but you can also find echoing cells where monks sat for countless hours in utter silence. Even after a major earthquake hit the region in the year 1080, the monastery remained unchanged. There is a bit of damage, but the churches are still standing, and the rock-cut tombs are stable enough that you could move a small city inside its walls. When the Ottomans attacked in 1576, the place was completely abandoned, and nobody ever bothered going back. Number 2. A Greek bathhouse. If you think of a bathhouse, the first place that comes to mind is most likely ancient Rome. The image of old men sitting in steamy rooms discussing philosophy might come to mind. However, the Egyptians were just as fond of baths as the Romans and the Greeks. Evidence has been found of bathhouses used for therapeutic purposes as far back as 2000 BC. And just recently, archaeologists discovered an ancient Egyptian bathhouse still standing after 2,200 years. Standing might be a bit of an overstatement. Archaeologists discovered its foundation in the ancient city of Berenice, located on the coast of the Red Sea. This forgotten seaport was discovered in 1818 and has since been the focus of many excavations. Archaeologists have uncovered temples still partially standing, as well as the remnants of sculptures and inscriptions. They even found some frankincense that had once been part of a vast trading network. You know, like frankincense and myrrh. The bathhouse has been reduced to little more than crumbling structural walls, but at one time it was enormous. It had 14 bathtubs fed by water reservoirs that pumped water out of a well. Visitors to the ancient spa had instant access to hot or cold water. It was likely a popular resting spot for caravans, merchants, and travelers. Number 1. Peverel Castle. Peverel Castle has been standing over the village of Castleton in England since it was built in 1066. You can still climb to the top of the castle and look out over the sprawling countryside, down into the rural Hope Valley, where the hills climb into the horizon. The castle began its life as a small fortress during the Norman conquest, when the Normans came to England from France and took over the country. The town near the castle became an economic center in northern England, and the castle grew into a stone behemoth. Then, in 1166, King Henry II made improvements to the Acropolis. And although the castle was a mighty fortress, it never got to see a single battle. However, it came close in 1216, when it was given to William de Ferrers as a gift by King John. The appointed castle official refused to give it up, and the king authorized the earl to use force in order to evict its former inhabitant. But the tenant of the castle eventually came to their senses and surrendered without a fight. Thanks for watching! Which of these incredible ancient places do you think will continue standing the longest? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!